Hey guys, welcome to the I Hope They Hear This podcast. And today's episode is a huge treat for me because one of my closest friends, Andrew Kim, is on. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you are coming to us from Washington, or you call it the DMV, right?
Yeah, so DMV stands for DC, Maryland, Virginia. So I'm like right outside of Washington, DC. So I live
Yeah.
in technically Arlington. So
Mm.
it's like right across the river from DC. So yeah.
And like I said, you are actually one of my oldest, closest friends. You were groomsmen at my wedding.
hmm
You even gave a speech at my at the not the reception. The what's the other one called? Is it the reception? Yeah, the
Yeah, the
reception.
reception.
Yeah, yeah.
hmm
So yeah, we have a very long history, and um, I've been wanting you to be on the podcast for a long time, but you hesitated and you kept saying no. I finally wore you down.
No, it's because I hold your podcast in such high regard that I wouldn't want to bring it down by keep coming on here. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to be on here. So thank you for having
Yeah. So let's start from I actually the focal point of this podcast, I want it to be kind of your story. And
me.
I feel like you have had some missteps in life. I mean, nothing major, but like you've had plans, right? But you've kind of sidetracked. But and it took you a little bit to like, for example, like graduating college. It took you a little bit longer than other people. But
hmm
you right now probably one of the most successful friends that I have. And I think it just speaks a lot to your character and your personality. So I wanted to showcase that kind of as a focal point today. But in doing that, I think we can weave together kind of how we met and, like our long history with each other. So let's talk about how we met because it was very interesting how we met. Do you remember like the first day we met each other?
I do, and I hope people don't think I'm a creep for remembering this. But dude, we met. This is my version of the story, anyways. Is we met? I think it was like second semester of sixth grade. I think you came to Georgia right in the middle of the year,
Hmm.
and it just so happened that we were both Korean, and I think our schedules were like identical.
Yeah.
So like I think our teacher saw that our schedules were identical, so she like asked me like, "Oh, Andrew, do you want to, kind of show David around, get him like acclimated to the new school and stuff like that." So me being the great friend I am, um, obliged and dude, and I'm really thankful for that day because I made one of my closest friends there. But I remember I remember what shoes I was wearing that day. If that's a
What
little
remember
weird.
that?
There
This
were
was like
some
20 years ago.
dude. It was probably what 21 years ago now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, there were a pair of Reebok pumps, and the reason I remember them because I remember I was like walking down the hallway to show you how to open lockers,
That's right.
and I remember there was like a loud squeak from one of them, and I was like, man, I was like thinking in my head, this kid probably thinks my shoes suck. And this is before like this is when we're at like these were actually like somewhat new, like Reebok pumps. They weren't retros, so
Hmm.
they weren't really like highly regarded or anything like that.
Mm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that's my recollection of it.
It's weird to think about now because um, I think the first day of school in Atlanta for me, I
hmm
hated it. I was groggy because there's that 3 hour time difference. I was tired, first of all, because what our school started at like 8:25, right? Or something like that.
I don't remember.
That would have been like 5:25 for my normal
hmm
schedule coming from LA, and I just didn't want I didn't want like to like meet anybody. I didn't want to make any new friends. I was kind of resentful toward my parents about having moved here. But I one thing I remember about you is when the teacher said, "Hey Andrew, can you show David around?" You were so enthusiastic and you were like so like happy about it. It kind of took me aback a little bit. I was like, oh, I guess this is the
Dude,
southern hospitality that they keep talking about.
dude, were you thinking in your head, like, man, this kid definitely doesn't have any friends?
No. I just remember thinking, okay, this guy is gonna show me around, and we're probably never gonna talk again. That honestly was one of the first thoughts I had.
Mhm.
But I mean, I think throughout the year, just because we were in so many classes together, we got to know each other pretty well. Like, you know, um, you were the one who brought me to church for the first time. So I had attended church in LA, but it was mostly just kind of social and to meet people.
Right.
But the church that you took me to back
Mhm.
when we were in sixth grade is the church that I'm still attending now.
Yeah.
The name has changed, but it's
Right.
the same
Right.
church. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess I'm partially responsible for your salvation, right? I'm completely joking. Disclaimer: David is a God-loving and fearing man, and that is all. It's all him. So.
No, I credit a lot of it to you, honestly. Because yeah, if I think if you hadn't invited me, then I think
Mhm.
that was the right time for me to go to church. If
Mhm.
you had invited me like 2 years later, I don't think I would have gone, to be honest.
Really? Why?
Because I was just vulnerable enough and seeking community enough to
Mhm.
give it a try. But if I had established myself enough with like a friend group at school,
Mhm.
like several years into being in Atlanta, I think I would have been like, I don't need it. I don't even want to explore it, you know?
Dang.
Yeah.
And you never told me that. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, dude. I think back on our our times at NSBC, and dude, it was like our church was so small, but
Yeah.
like that community was just like so like close knit, and it was. I just remember it was so awesome. I have so many good memories there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But dude, that's awesome that you stayed there and you grew with the church, as it's grown a lot, obviously.
Yeah.
And dude, you met some key people in your life there.
Ah, I
So
met my wife there, so
yeah, and I mean, you can't. Most importantly, me, kind of. But yeah, close second is your wife.
yeah. You know
There's
what's
some friends in
crazy?
there.
You know,
Uh huh.
in Pastor Troy's office, he still
Mhm.
has like a church photo,
Mhm.
and I'm like right in the middle for some reason in the front, and I Pastor Troy always says, you know, the day that we took that photo, I asked myself, who is this random kid who keeps coming to our church without his parents? And like 20 years later, like
Uh
he's
huh.
still at the church. I still see him leading.
Yeah, and your parents are there now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my
Yeah.
dad and yeah, both of them are very involved in the church. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No, dude.
you've changed our lives in a very significant way.
Damn. I'm not gonna take credit for that, but no, I'm really happy for that.
Yeah, and you know, I think growing up with you, I have a lot of fond memories too. And one that always comes to mind is we used to play in your neighborhood, and we used to have
Mhm.
these Razor scooters that we
Oh
would
man,
ride all the
dude,
time.
I remember this as well.
And it was like leading into your neighborhood. Your house was kind of at the end, in a cul-de-sac, but
Right.
leading up to it, there's a really nice hill that you can use to gain speed, race and things like that. And
Mhm.
I remember we like Fast and the Furious had just come out,
Yeah.
and like we couldn't drive, so we were like pretending like we were racing on the scooters.
Right. We would scream "Nas" as we pedal faster.
Yeah. And I remember a trick, and it wasn't even really a trick, but something I would pull on you often is, if I see that you're about to win, because your driveway, like right where it started, was kind of the finish line.
Mhm.
I would intentionally fall into the grass and like act like I was hurt, and then you would stop, and as you're coming toward me, I would hop back on my scooter and then speed to the finish line.
I remember that actually.
I feel like I've done it multiple times, but you still like stopped and came back for me every time. Like, you probably caught on that I was just trying to trick you, but I think it speaks to your character that you still always came back for me.
Well, I appreciate that, but I will tell you now that I think I've learned my lesson, and if I see a child on a razor scooter fall, I am not helping him or her. Um, but dude, that's so funny that you bring it up because I still remember that like those moments vividly. So
Yeah, it's a really good fond memory of growing up.
in a public service announcement to the listeners, it just speaks to David's character that he is a conniving type of person, or he was once upon a time, right?
Yes, yes, I was. You know, we had this conversation before, where I I told you that I feel like I would have been a sociopath. Do you remember this conversation? It was
uh,
before Aisley was born. I was visiting you in DC.
mhm.
Yeah, and I think we had a conversation in the car where I said,
Okay, yeah, I do remember now.
yeah, dude. So let's be honest here. Now that we're on this podcast and
Mm-hmm.
we have a reason to be very deep and honest, do you
Okay.
feel like I was kind of, I guess the word was selfish? Do you feel like I was kind of selfish back then?
Um, I wouldn't say, I don't know if selfish is the right word. I mean, you were very different than you are now.
Mm,
You were a lot more, I would say, yeah, a little closed off. And I don't say this as like this was like arrogance, but like maybe a little more self-centered.
mm,
Um, but it wasn't to the point where like, it was really bad, obviously, because we became friends,
yeah.
and I think it just took time for you to kind of open up, at least to me, right? Um, but dude, like I look at it now, and it's funny when you mention those words because that's like the opposite of what you are. You're actually one of the most selfless people I know.
Wow.
Um,
Thank you.
but yeah, so for the listeners out there, David was a very different person
Yeah.
when I met him.
I,
Can I share a story?
of course.
Okay, so I guess like just going back to middle school, I wouldn't say you're a sociopath, but he's very he David had this like very he was like quiet, yet he gave this pissed off kind of look vibe. And anyways, I remember, I mean, I wouldn't say we, some of us at that age were kind of little punks back then, start trouble. And I just remember there was this one incident where I think you got like pushed or something, right? Into into a locker or something.
No, no,
And
it was somebody like kneed me in my stomach.
oh, why? Do you remember why?
I don't, but I do
Okay.
remember the story you're about to tell.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I've never seen David that angry before in my life, and um, usually, like, I don't, advocate violence or anything like that. But I think when I was 11 or 12, I did. Um, and usually, I would be like, "Oh, dude, like, let's get him." But I've just never seen David that angry, and I just didn't see him as the type of person that would physically hurt someone, right? Maybe only because maybe because we were friends and I've always seen like the good side of you. But as David was like going after that guy, and I remember I made a split decision right then and there to I stopped you and I said, David, it's not worth it, or something like
Yeah. So the way that I remember it is
that.
it was right after a class had ended. I think it might have been the last class of the day.
Uh-huh.
And when the class ends, everyone's flooding out into the hallway. And
Yeah.
as I was going to my locker or something, this guy he like pulled me aside and just like kneed me in my stomach. And he wasn't that big of a guy. Like I think I was pretty timid, but it was a pretty small, scrawny guy. So I had no hesitation in terms of being okay with going after this guy. Like in my
Mhm.
head, I was like, I will pummel this kid.
Right.
I will make him pay, right? So I think that's probably what you saw in my eyes. But as the flood of as the river like flow of people were passing by me,
Mhm.
and I was going after this kid, somebody from that river like pulled me in and then like dragged me away. And in that moment, I was like, "Who is this?" But it was you. So like I was like really upset that someone pulled me away. But it was you, and so I was like, "Well, he's a friend. I'm not gonna try to attack him or
Uh-huh.
anything, right?" And then you took me away, and then I don't remember the words you said, but it was something along the lines of, "It's not worth it." Yeah.
That's to this day the single biggest regret I have in my life. I should have seen what played out that day. But
But can I say this? I think that, and I'm not even kidding. I think that changed the trajectory of my life.
oh, I agree,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah. I really truly think if I got into that fight, I think I would
Mhm.
have been okay with fighting anybody like at school moving forward. But to this, I mean, I've never gotten in a not a major physical altercation with anybody at school. Yeah, and I think the fact that you pulled me off that guy that day
Mhm.
had a lot to do with it.
Well, I'll take credit for that. But the running joke that we always joke about when we talk about this is who knows what David would have become
Yeah,
if that fight happened.
you're so right.
I take it to the extreme. I say, he could be I don't know, a drug addict or drug dealer or whatever, a criminal in prison right now. But all thanks to me,
Yeah, I
became a
think
great man,
yeah.
great father, great husband. So I'll
You
take it.
you you definitely have had a lot of irrevocable impact in my life, for sure. I mean, just those two things alone, like taking me to church, making sure that I didn't fight this kid, huge, huge. That's then kind of shifts gears into talking about what I alluded to when we started this podcast about
Mhm,
kind of, um, and this is kind of, okay, don't take this the wrong way, but
mhm.
when I say that you changed the trajectory of my life, I think if you didn't pull me off that guy, it would have veered closer to the trajectory that you were on for a little bit. For a little bit.
um, yeah, no, I agree.
But we can talk about this now because you've completely like turned. You're not on that trajectory anymore. You're obviously not a drug addict or a drug dealer or anything like that. Um, but what there was kind of a time where you were like dabbling in the darker side of things, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, we can talk about that. I don't, like you said, it's part of my past. So
Mm.
that's a long time ago. So I'm not really too worried about talking about it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I guess if we just talk about trajectory, you and I, we had similar upbringings. We grew up in the same area, attended the same schools. And I think that trajectory was like pretty like, we were in line with each other up until maybe like early to mid high school,
Mm.
right? And I think it just became, like the group of friends we had outside of each other. So it's hard to explain why that happened. Um, but yeah, like I got more involved with not like, I mean, some were like kind of quote unquote bad, but others were not just, they weren't bad people per se,
Yeah.
but they had different priorities than what our parents put on us. So yeah, then like I started hanging out with kids that like would like skip school or like smoke cigarettes and stuff like that. um yeah, so and I think that like as you make those group of friends at such a young age of like 13, 14, 15, they, especially if they're not like bad people, you maintain those friendships, and they like I truly believe like you are who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
So you get involved in things that um that your friends are doing at the time. So that trickled on. Let's just kind of fast forward to like college.
Yeah.
um so like we both got into the same school, right? So I mean, like everything there up to there, that point is like, okay, like it's just like little things where like, you know, maybe they were like you got in fights or something, or like, you know, you smoke cigarettes. Like it's nothing like, you know, like, okay, this kid's like ending up in prison
Yeah.
kind of deal. Well, actually, I think our parents thought that. But,
Yeah.
you know, you think of it like, like if I look at a high schooler now and he's like smoking cigarettes and skipping school or whatever, I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, you know, this kid's going to end up to become a delinquent, you know,
Right.
person in society, partially because, you know, I went through that. And anyways, so college happened, and you know, that's the first time that you're kind of, you know, like you're outside of your parents' house and you have all this freedom that you've never had before. So that's where I think it really just, I kind of really went off the rails. You know, that's when I think I started drinking. Some kids, like I know, they start drinking like middle school, high school. But yeah, I didn't start really drinking, um, you know, socially until college. And nothing wrong with that. But I think the biggest thing that I guess I wanted to talk about was my first year of college. Did not do the best. I mean, we went to a pretty tough school.
Yeah.
So, but second year, I kind of got my stuff together. But that's when I got introduced to. I remember the first day it happened. Is I got introduced to like poker and gambling, and I still remember to this day where I think the first like exposure of it I got was one of my roommates. I will not name him, but he's also a dear friend of ours. um, one, one of my roommates was playing online poker in his room, and I was like watching him play, and I was like, oh, so like, is it just like a game on the computer? And he's like, no, this is like for real money. You're playing for real money against people. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I know how to play poker. Like, how hard could it be?
Mm.
So I think I deposited like $100 into Poker Stars. Um, and I think I played and I won like $200 in like 20 minutes or something.
Wow.
I was like, dude, like I just hit jackpot. Like this is easy. And that's where like my interest in like poker and gambling happened. And then
Wait, so when that happened, when you got introduced to that, was something going on? Because I remember it was a, something that everyone was doing. People were inviting each other to play like games at their houses and dropping pretty significant cash.
yeah,
Was
so
there something happening?
no, so like I guess so that's fast forwarding a little bit. So that's
Okay.
kind of like my introducing to like poker itself. So let me just
Okay.
fast forward to, I guess like then through that my interest in poker grew, and then like, you know, I started meeting people that played, and that kind of led to like live games. And
Mm.
you know, at first it'd be like, you know, just for, you know, like little to no money, because we're in college, we don't make money at the time, you know. And then I remember when I was like about 19, um, I had a select group of friends that were, I guess, like, you know, it kind of into in that scene, and they were doing it with adults. Like they were my age, but they were doing it with adults for bigger money. And we, I still remember it's like some random bar in Tucker, Georgia, and we went there, and it was a 1-2 blind poker game. And I remember like I played and I would see my friends like working. When I say work, they would be like dealing. Oh, sorry, I was getting a phone call. Yeah, so they're dealing cards, and the point of the story is like I just realized like, you know, like how much money you can make so fast there. Like you can have like a good night and make like, you know, 500 to like $1,000. And this is just the beginning,
In a single
right?
night?
Yeah, and then especially as a college kid, you know, that's like a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where I got introduced to all that. And I remember the following year in in school, I was thinking to myself, like, man, like I would love to like have like a certain amount of money saved up
Mm.
and just kind of like live life pretty good and go to school at the same time. So I made the genius idea of um, and not telling my parents. Um, Please, for anyone who listens to this and knows my parents, let's not repeat. Um, that I would take a semester off and kind of just do this like whole like poker thing,
Mm.
right? Like through working and then playing cards or whatever, just save up a bunch of money. And dude, like I made and spent probably the most money I have at my life until that point.
Mm.
And if you think about like that lifestyle, like what it entails, it's not conducive to like everyday life, because like these games, as you can imagine, happen at night,
Mm.
right? They start at like 9-10 p.m. or whatever, and they go till like 5-6, like sometimes noon the next day.
Mm.
So literally you're up all night sleeping during the day kind of thing. And then another problem with it is you actually end up gambling it yourself,
Mm.
right? And you're gambling way above your bankroll or what you can really afford to lose. But when you're 19, 20, whatever, 21 years old, like you're like fearless. You're like,
Yeah.
I don't care if I go broke.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just me because I'm dumb, but
No, I vividly remember kind of this part of your life because I
hmm
remember we talked about it. You kind of thinking about, hey, should I take a semester off to do this poker thing to save up money?
you
I
said
rem-
yes. I'm just
I'm
kidding.
sure I said that's a terrible idea.
Yeah, I know.
I
I'm
said
kidding, everyone.
I think I was very adamant. Hey man, don't do this.
hmm
And then you did it anyway. And I think what ended up happening is, so at the time, our other friend Daniel Hong, me and Daniel Hong, we had an apartment in like Buckhead. It
Yeah.
was a 2 bedroom, but you needed a place to stay because your parents thought that you were still going to school. You hadn't told them, so we got like a really cheap shower curtain. We literally blocked off like one end of the living room and said you can live here, right? But literally all that fit there was a
A
mattress,
bed,
yeah,
right?
and that was it. And you had access to the patio. But I remember I almost never saw you awake.
Yeah.
It
Because
was
like I'd be awake when you're sleeping, and
mhm.
I'd be sleeping when you're awake. Yeah.
Because when me and Daniel were off to class at school, like you'd be
Mhm.
sleeping, and we'd come back, and you're still sleeping most of the time, and you'd be up and about at like dinner time, and then you get ready, go do your stuff and things like that. So yeah, you were
Mhm.
pretty nocturnal during that time period, right?
Yeah, and I think that's where my life really started spiraling kind of out of control. Was like if you're up between the hours of 10 and whatever, like the wee hours of the morning, there's not many things you're going to be doing that's that productive, right? Unless you're like going to like a job that requires a night shift, which is sometimes what I was doing, but sometimes I was going out for entertainment,
Mm.
right, at that time. So if you think about it, a lot of the things that you'll be doing at the time, involves maybe like alcohol or even other stuff. And yeah, dude, I was not doing anything constructive with my time. And I would say like the hardest challenge of it all was eventually I think I kind of like smartened up and was like, hey, this isn't what I should be doing.
Mm.
But the hardest part of it all was actually going back to the life that the life trajectory or whatever that I should have been on the whole time,
Yeah.
and going back to school. Because one thing is like you start making that kind of money at it, like not, and when I say like that kind of money, it's not like I had like like millions or anything like that. Like to me, like a few $1,000s was a lot
Yeah.
then. And so, like one, I think you lose, like, there's two things. One is it was hard to go back to school and to like really just get disciplined to be like, hey, there's like, there's stuff I have to do to get my school stuff done.
Yeah.
Right. Like whether that be like studying for like you're studying for tests or like homework or whatever, or even going to class. Right. And then two is like, you don't want to lose that, income that you have coming in. So you're like thinking, oh, maybe I'll kind of just like do it part time and then do like part-time school. But if you think about those schedules, they just cannot work.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so yeah.
so a semester ended up becoming a year, right? Did you take a whole year off?
Man. So yeah, that semester turned into a year. And I think after that, I try to go back. And when I say try, is like I would start going back, and then like I literally just could not handle the load. And I still had like other stuff going on, like with the whole poker thing. Like I wasn't like completely out of it. And a lot of my close friends at the time were in that kind of stuff too. So I would somehow kept getting like reeled back in.
Yeah.
So that 1 year, like after that 1 year, that next semester I would try to go back, but I would end up having to withdraw from classes just because like I was doing so bad and because I wasn't putting the time. I wasn't even going to class.
Yeah.
So I kept withdrawing, and after you withdraw, that semester's done for, right? So you got to wait till the next semester before you can, re-enroll and stuff. So, dude, that happened like, I think that happened like three or four times.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So if you think about it, I think in total, that's literally like 2.5 years, maybe 3, gone. So yeah, for those of you that have wondered, why I was in school for so long is because of that. I had a little setback. During college.
I mean, in terms of the amount of time that you were actually in school, it wasn't that much. It wasn't like longer than anyone else's. It's just the fact that you had a big hole in the middle of it, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I think I did change majors.
That's right. Yeah.
Right, like halfway through. So that kind of maybe led to a little longer time. But yeah, in terms of like how many semesters I was actually like fully enrolled, it wouldn't be that much different than a normal person, I think.
So like you talk about your schedule and how difficult that was, especially when you're trying to reacclimate to kind of normal life. Did that have an impact on your dating life at all? Because you were in relationships during this period of time, right?
Yeah. Man, we're just going really in depth here.
Dude, I have a funny story. I'll tell later. Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, actually, there was. So I think around this time, like early, 20s. I think I met someone. I was dating someone at the time that was what I would consider like, I guess like a first love kind of deal. Like the first girl that like you really, really liked. You could actually say that you loved them. And I mean, I of course acknowledge that after the fact, but basically because of this lifestyle that I was leading, like I just wasn't putting in the time and the effort and treating her the way she deserved to be treated. If you can think about it, like I would go hours, like 12 hours plus without responding. I wouldn't be available during the day to like hang out with her because I was like sleeping. So yeah, I mean, and I'm sure, huh?
Thunder?
Yeah, it's about to storm really bad here today.
Okay. Sorry, continue.
Just saying. Okay, yeah, and so it obviously things ended eventually. But yeah, I think that was another part of my life that was really hard because like I think I took that one, that loss pretty hard.
Yeah.
Because she was the first girl that I really, really liked. I guess I lost her, or I felt like I lost her because because of my actions, right? So yeah, I think after that, what, like for the next like, I took it really hard. I'm talking like maybe 2, 3, 4 years of trying to get over it kind of deal. And I'm sure you've seen that. You've seen that firsthand
Yeah.
many times. There was many nights where I would come to your room drunk, just wanted to have deep conversations.
Yeah.
And I want to apologize to you because I'm sure there are many times where you're like, bro, it's like 3 a.m. I don't want to talk about the same thing that we talked about last night. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because one thing I do want to commend you for. I know some of us make fun of you for this, but um, I commend you for the fact that you kind of are very in tune with your emotions. And I don't mean that in a negative way at all. And the way that you kind of demonstrated that is like there would be nights we would go out drinking and like you would kind of open the floodgates of your emotions and you would I remember there was more than one occasion where like we were coming back to our apartment. You are you were on the floor of the parking lot, like crying. uh, you're on mute, by the way, if you are
Oh,
crying,
sorry.
and like you're kind of pining for or like calling out for kind of lost love. But like I think about that now, and I think that was kind of courageous, being that honest and open about your feelings and admitting that you love this girl, admitting that you like blamed yourself and that you like were very upset about it. Like I don't think any of our other friends would be that open to one another, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I think I think I've always been the type of guy that puts the saying like wears his heart on his sleeve kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I've had no problem with that. Like if I'm sad, I'll show it. If I'm mad, I'll show it.
Yeah.
It's I think it's a strength and a weakness. Strength being that you're like, I guess like emotionally intelligent enough to kind of express your feelings when you need to. Whereas it's a bad thing because sometimes you need to keep stuff in, right?
No,
To save face.
I actually think it served. Well, we'll get into this later, but this is my
Mm-hmm.
hypothesis. I think it served you very well being that emotionally in tune because it's allowed you to be able to read other people, like their emotions, and it's helped you be, like respond appropriately and things like that. But think about that
Okay.
while I tell this story, okay?
Okay.
Because I didn't tell you for the longest time. I think I might have told you for the first time a year or two ago. But
Okay.
this was like at the height of your depression, your breakup induced depression. It was around the
Mm-hmm.
time where we were burning everything that reminded you of her in the fireplace. We were
I
literally
remember that.
in the fireplace, saying
Yeah.
you gotta forget about her. Um,
Uh-huh.
and I remember looking at you and just feeling like, oh, he might cry. Like I think he's in a state, emotionally heightened state where he might cry. And it reminded me of the movie Good Will Hunting. And there's a scene in Good Will Hunting where Will, Matt Damon's character,
Mm-hmm.
is in like therapy with Robin Williams' character. And they're just talking, and Robin Williams, he's like, hey, it's not your fault. And
Remember
like he
this
just
scene.
keeps saying it's not your fault, it's not your fault. And Matt Damon ends up crying, and it's like kind of a breakthrough because he had shouldered everything,
Right.
and now being able to admit that it wasn't his fault. So I thought you would get the joke. I thought it'd be funny to break the tension.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, hey buddy, hey bro, it's not your fault. And you were like, what? And I was like, oh, he doesn't get it. I gotta repeat it for him to get it. And so I said, it's not your fault, bro. And then you kept saying, what? Why are you saying that? And then I remember you kind of broke down in tears. And in that moment, I was too scared to tell you that it was a joke. It was a bit that I was doing. And we're like, yeah, it's not your fault. And then we kind of just like let that moment be. But Do you remember when I told you this for the first time that it was a?
Yeah, I do now that you mention it. And you know, part of the reason why I didn't understand what you were alluding to at the time was I don't think at that time I watched Good Will Hunting.
Mm.
So I think I watched it after you told me that story many years later, and it's a great movie, obviously. But
Sorry, man.
no, dude. I just want to thank you for always being there for me when I needed it.
Yeah, yeah,
So.
of course, of course. But so then let's with all of that chaos and kind of turmoil and all that kind of happening,
Hmm.
I want to then get into and talk about how you were able to adjust back to the norm, but and not only get through it, but kind of thrive, right? Because like I said before in the intro, you are one of, if not the most successful person that I know, at least career and like finance wise. And that's not to say that success is 100% just predicated on how much money you're making, but I mean you're also like you're doing well in life, you know. So just all around you've gone from like really being upset, sad, depressed, unable to like get into the daily routine of things to thriving, right? So
Hmm.
can you kind of talk about the steps that it took for you to go from like rock bottom to blossoming?
Those are kind use of words. So I appreciate that. But yeah, so you know, let's fast forward even to later. Like I was probably in my mid to like 25, 26 ish at the time, and you know, I started kind of getting my act together in terms of school. Right, I got out of all the other stuff, and I started actually, you know, focusing on school a little more. Um, but to be honest, I think the biggest motivator to kind of get everything back on track was I met another girl. Yeah, I guess women have a big influence on my life. Um, yeah, like I met another girl, and yeah, like we had a good relationship, at least I thought. And you know, I met her, you know, around that time, 26, and like she just she was younger than me, but she had, you know, high goals, high aspirations for her life, and it just made me realize, like, you know, well, she's not like, so she was studying to be a doctor, or that was her, like her goal at the time. And I was like, you know, well, you know, a girl like that, it's not going to want to be with a guy that's, you know, just doing whatever in life, you know. So that really motivated me to that. Like, it made me just want to be a better person, right? And I think that's crucial in relationships, right? Whether it be professionally or, you know, even just I don't know, as like personality wise, just if they want you, if they motivate you just to better yourself, right? That's a very important thing to have in a relationship. So yeah, that was the biggest driver, and I really, you know, took that to heart, and I actually tried. I knew that like graduating and ultimately finding a job and stuff was my next big goal.
Mm.
So sorry about the background noise.
No, no.
It's thundering pretty hard here. But yeah, I think like it was maybe like a year or two after our relationship. You know, I did pretty well my last couple semesters, and graduated, and ended up getting, you know, it's, can I share a story about the job in my first job out of college
Uh-huh.
was with a consulting slash software company. Um, and I remember they had a strict guideline on minimum GPAs.
Mm.
And my GPA in college was not the best for obvious reasons. You know, I messed up a lot. But my major GPA met the bare minimum, right, which is a 3.0.
Mm.
And I was like, okay. So I put that on my resume, and I remember them asking me during my initial interview or my initial screening. They're like, oh, like it says, you know, like your major GPA is a 3.0. You know, what's your major? Like one, because like we have like a hard requirement on that. And I remember I like fabricated this elaborate story of of basically, obviously not what really happened, but you know, of like how I had to like overcome hardships and stuff. And
Uh-huh.
yeah, like, and then I think they were really impressed by it. I think I did a really good job making up a story there. And yeah, that led me to my first job. And from there, it's, you know, I think one thing I've learned since entering the workforce, even though it was late compared to my peers, is I personally just like I take pride in the work that I do.
Mm,
Um, like when it comes to like, you know, my work, like I take a lot of sense of ownership in it.
mm,
And I feel like someone's reputation, at least in a professional setting, is very important.
mm,
So I think that's kind of what's kind of elevated me through, even as I left companies, is like people always say like, oh, like, you know, he's a hard worker,
yeah.
which is interesting because like not many people would say that in other aspects of my life, you know. So
No,
yeah.
but not only that, I was gonna attribute your success to your work ethic because I definitely do see that when you kind of get into something, you really do, like you said, take ownership and you go for it, right? There's many times
Mm.
where we be texting and it's late at night, but you're still working because you have to get something pushed out or finished or whatever the case was, right? But I think another aspect of your another contributing factor of your success definitely has to be your personality. Um, you're you're very you're very personable. You make people feel comfortable, like when you talk to them, and like you're just fun to be around, right? Like people like having conversations with you. Would you say that that is part of the reason? Like, would you agree that that is part of the reason for your success?
uh Not to toot my own horn, but I will. Yeah, I agree with that. Just because, like you said, like being personable, I think in a, you know, in corporate America is very important. And it's not. I mean, part of it is a front, right? But at the same time, like I think just naturally as a person, you know, I always got along with people well. Um, there wasn't many people, at least that I know of, that like disliked me for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I was always respectful, you know. Um, so I always treated people with respect. So um, yeah, like so, especially in a consulting setting, I guess like team collaboration within your team is very important.
No.
So you know, I feel like half the battle is like if you just it's like it's either you show up and you can get along with the people that you work with, you know, that's like half the game right there, regardless of your performance.
Mm.
So yeah, I would agree that that's definitely, you know, led to whatever successes I've had in my career.
Yeah, and you know, now kind of sitting on having heard your story, I think there are other things that we should tell the listeners. I think one of the reasons why you fell so hard into some of the things that you did in college is because at home you have a fair load of responsibility, more so than the average person at home, right?
I mean, growing up, I don't think I ever really acknowledged that or thought that, just because, you know, that's what my life was. You know, that's all I knew. Um, yeah, I guess you could say that. And to provide some context around it, um, I have. I'm assuming you're talking about my brother, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So for those of you that don't know, my brother has a condition called cerebral palsy. So he was born premature. So, you know, he has learning disability and, you know, physical disabilities as well.
Yeah.
So he's what? He's 27 now. Holy crap. Just that's weird to say out loud.
Wow.
But yeah, but you know, he's still to this day unable to walk on his own without, you know, some assistance, like, you know, with like what are you, crutches or like a walker or something like that. Um, so definitely, I think growing up it was a little challenging in the sense my parents were always focused on my brother. So I think maybe just from that development standpoint, damn, I'm getting so um, personal here. Is maybe I just lacked the affection and like love, I guess, from like my parents that like other kids may have received. Um, like I always knew, like, even growing up, like I always knew my parents loved me, and I mean they're great parents, right? They've given me everything I ever needed, and I appreciate them so much. But I think one of the things that I lacked, I guess, was some of just the little things like the time or the words of affirmation sometimes. And I think that's a mix of like maybe just my family dynamic plus like a cultural thing where,
Yeah.
for example, like Korean fathers don't really say mushy-gushy stuff, right?
Right.
So
Yeah, and but not only that, but you also had the added responsibility of needing to take care of your brother, right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
yeah, all the years I've known you, you've always kind of put your brother as priority. There were
hmm
plenty of times where we were hanging out and you brought your brother along, which we all enjoy, right? But just needing to think of someone else other than yourself when especially when you're that young. I remember
hmm
like when you first started driving, even like one of your major duties was driving your brother around. So it's not a surprise to see someone in that environment suddenly kind of let loose to live their own life and without supervision, right?
yeah, yeah. I never thought of it that way. um but yeah, I think that would contribute to that. And also my parents, this, they were pretty strict when I was growing up.
Yeah.
So the added responsibility and just all the restrictions that I had around me that maybe some of my friends at the time didn't have, it just made me like, yeah. So when I got into college and away from all like all those like those chains were kind of like taken off me,
Yeah.
I really just went nuts. um, but at the end of the day, um, I think like everything that happened in terms of my upbringing, my family situation, whatever, I'm really grateful for it because it's helped me like develop a level of understanding and empathy and stuff like that that not many people I think would get
Mm.
like naturally, right? So I had that instilled into me as like at an early age.
Yeah.
So I think it's really created the personality that I have today. And not everyone's going to agree that it's a good personality, but I would like to think most people do.
Yeah.
So yeah, for that reason, I'm grateful.
Mm. So just to kind of recap,
Mhm.
although you fell into like poker, um, and did you? I forgot to ask while you were telling the story. When you got out of the whole poker game, were you in
Mhm.
debt at all, or did you come out with money?
Um, I have a story. I remember kind of the last day, like the last straw, as you can say. So I think I had like maybe like I don't know, like $7,000 or $8,000, like
Wow.
saved, right? Um, from my exodus
Yeah.
of this of this life. And I remember there was this one night. For any of you card players out there, it was we were doing a round switch of No Limit Texas Hold'em, and No Limit up, or yeah, No Limit, no, it's Pot Limit. Maybe it was Pot Limit. I forgot, but it was Omaha. So for those of you that don't know what that is, it's basically you get 4 cards instead of 2,
Hmm.
right? And you're trying to make the best poker hand that you can with any of your 2 cards. So if you think about it, the possibilities are just that much more of what you can draw for, right? So that's when the gambling gets like a lot more people are gambling at that point. I mean, there's still like strategy and math and all that stuff involved, but it didn't help that probably everyone I was playing with were also degenerates. So like math and logic does not play a factor at these games. It's just like who has the biggest balls and who's willing to play. But anyways, I remember, dude, I had such a bad night. I literally lost everything I had. in one night. And I remember the next morning, like not even next morning, it was like the end of the game. It was like 5, 6 a.m. And I remember having to drive to the bank, like right when it opened, to take all that money out, to pay with my losses. And
Gosh.
dude, that's when I think it was like rock bottom. I was like, dude, like this is not worth it. Like
Yeah.
there's like the highs are good, but the lows are pretty bad. And like it's just a roller coaster ride. There's no stability. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how that happened. Dude, I saw some crazy stuff, man, when I was doing that whole thing.
Like
Like
what?
I saw like I'll just for context, like I'll talk about like some of the biggest games I've seen. And I wasn't playing in this one, but I was like working it. When I say working it, is like you're actually a dealer for the poker game, right? And you get paid like hourly or whatever. Dude, like this was like a big game. The blinds were like 10.25 or something dollars,
Hmm.
right? So, and like,
Oh wow.
dude, these pots were getting like huge. And for anyone that's ever played at like a underground poker game, right? Like it's not like playing at the casino where there's like, you bet 4 times the big blind or whatever, stuff like that. Dude, people like, it was like thousands and thousands of dollars. I think the biggest pot that I saw in my life was probably that I was working was like probably like $25,000.
Wow.
Dude, it was insane. And you meet some interesting people, man, during that time. There's like, you meet what you could call like elitists, like, doctors, lawyers, and stuff like that. But I remember one time one of the players, like ex-football, like NFL stars were there.
Wow.
Um, oh, okay, last one, and I'll stop going off tangent, dude. So as a dealer, you're responsible for flipping the cards.
Uh-huh.
I remember I was dealing for this game, and it was it was an ex NFL safety that was involved in a hand, and I misdealt it, as in like I flipped the card over too soon before like the action was over.
Uh,
And that card I remember gave him like a straight. He would have won that hand. But because I misdealt it, I had to like, it was a misdeal, and then I had to like, I forgot what I had to do.
uh,
But basically the last card was not, it was not the card that I was supposed to be.
mm.
Dude, and I remember he was so pissed. Like he slammed the table, and if he's an ex NFL safety, he's a pretty big dude. And I think that like my waist above my waist, I was like pretty calm,
Uh-huh.
dude. But like I think I probably pissed my pants. I was so scared. I thought I was gonna fucking die that day.
Oh, was he like did he threaten you at all?
No, I don't think he like threatened me like, oh, I'm gonna kill you kind of thing.
Uh,
But I mean, he was visibly pissed. Like he was like, like, what are you gonna do about it to like, make up for all the money I just lost?
uh.
I mean, I'm like, what do you want me to do? Like I can't do anything.
Yeah.
Um,
Dang.
but yeah, meet some interesting people in those environments for sure.
Wow. That's crazy. I'm surprised. I don't know more about. You know what? I think I actively stayed away from being too interested in that. I think I was honestly worried that I would want to, because I remember you telling me how much money you would make in a night, and I'm just
Mm,
too scared. I don't trust myself enough to dabble in those things. That would, I'm sure I would fall super hard.
yeah, and even now, I'm 32. Wow, that sounds old. I'm 32 years old, and to this day, it still impacts my life in terms of like like I think it's ruined my concept of money. Like it's gotten a lot better,
Mm,
but when you're able to get money that fast, right, at an early age, um, the the, the value of money doesn't really stick with you,
right.
right? So like I remember like even after like I graduated school and started working, like no one's really making that much money right out of school. So like $1,000, for example, it's a lot. I mean, even now it's a lot, right? But like, dude, like I didn't think anything of it. Like I was like thinking, oh, dude, like I can go out and spend $1,000 in one night and I would have no regrets. until months later when like my credit card bill would rack up. Um,
Hey, can I tell a funny story about credit cards?
of
I
course.
remember you you were talking to me one day, and I forget if I told you this or you found out and you were freaking out, but you had a credit card and there was sizable debt. There was some debt on it, and
Uh,
you thought that if you canceled the credit card, the interest on it would freeze, and then you wouldn't have to pay it. And I remember saying, I don't think that's how it works. And you left it there just accruing interest for several months, I
yes,
remember.
yes, I remember this. It wasn't several months, bro. It was like I think a couple years. Um, yeah, yeah. Like I think from an early dude. Actually, was it? It was you. My first credit card ever. Do you remember that?
What was it?
I think I was 16, right? I didn't even have credit, but like, Banana Republic and stuff would send you like, like credit card offers. I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking in my head, like, I think I had a credit limit of $300 or something, or $200. And I was like, oh, so are you saying I can like buy clothes and not have to pay for it?
Mm.
And obviously I like maxed it out with like, new clothes. And then I had no money to pay it off with. And I think I was 16 and I think I asked you to borrow $200
Yeah.
or something like that to pay it off. And I will never forget that because I remember at that moment I was thinking, man, because $200 at 16 is a lot.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, David's the real one. Um, but that kind of character, that acts of kindness, like it meant just to me then as like you lending me like 50,000 today.
Wow.
Like it's so that's like a story I'll never forget between us as well.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's the story you told during your speech at my wedding. I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember I was sitting and brainstorming and just think about stories and like like, hey, what are some good memories I have of David like doing stuff for me?
Mm.
um and just to be clear, I think in our friendship, you've definitely done a lot for me, more than I've done for you.
No,
So
I don't agree with that. I mean,
I mean,
just
I only stopped you from being a drug addict, heroin addict. So
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
wait, hold on one
yeah, yeah,
second.
yeah.
Sorry.
Wait,
Okay.
is that Daniel?
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
just walked in.
It's funny. Your current roommate Daniel now, he actually has a part in the story that we told where you took me off that trajectory of becoming a
Hmm.
drug addict. I remember immediately after you pulled me away, we I don't know why, but we were together with Daniel, and I told him
Hmm.
what you did, and he told me, bro, if I were you, I would have punched Andrew in the face and gone back after that guy. So
Hey, so I'm glad. Aren't you glad it wasn't Daniel that intercepted you?
yeah, it was.
Um,
Thankfully, it was you who got to me before Daniel did.
I'm gonna tell Daniel that after this. Say, dude, if it was for you, David might be like a felon. Who knows?
um, yeah, no, but yeah, just thanks for sharing about your life, because I think some of the really valuable lessons we as listeners can take from it is work ethic goes a long way. Being Having a goal can help you really get back on track if you find yourself being distracted or having taken detours. Um, and
Yeah,
and just your being personable is a huge thing. Having a good personality, because I think those three things really did help you. From what I'm hearing, it really did help you kind of get back on
yeah,
track.
yeah, definitely. And I guess one other thing to add to that is, I think a lot of my time in my 20s, I was very, you know, down on myself for kind of being set back, right?
Mm,
So, everyone's on their own pace. So I just want people to understand that, like, you're always going to be behind someone in this race that we call life. So, go at your own pace. There's always ways to turn things around.
yeah, for sure.
And I guess my story's just a small example of that.
Yeah, that's a great example of that.
Mhm.
Well, is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't cover? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I could talk hours about stories between like us growing up, but I think that's for another time.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being on, Andrew. For the listeners, if you have any questions or any thoughts about what we talked about today, if you want to connect with Andrew because he's just a great guy to know, feel free to leave me any messages at IHTHTpodcast@gmail.com or on Instagram at I hope they hear this or on Twitter at IHTHTpodcast. And Andrew, again, thank you so much for being on. I'm sure as soon as we're done recording this, we're gonna go to playing a sport tonight. So
Yes, sir.
yeah,
Hey, but seriously, man, it's an honor
yeah.
to be on here. So appreciate you having me.
This was really fun. I'm glad we finally got to do this.
Mhm.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you, Andrew, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.